Good morning, everyone on the West Coast, and good afternoon to those of you tuning in from the East Coast. I am so excited to welcome you to our 2021 Handshake Access Conference. It is such a joy to be here with all of you. I don't know if you realize we had over 4,600 people registered for today's conference, today and tomorrow. We have over 1,500 schools represented, and I am so thrilled that we could be part of convening and bringing all of you together. We obviously look forward to the days where we will be able to gather in person, but in the meantime, we are so excited to be here with you virtually. I hope you enjoyed Tiffany's welcome as you logged into the system today. It almost is like she is right there with you. Her energy is just palpable and so contagious. I would be remiss if I did not start my welcome with a quick thank you to my team. Katie Kelly, Tiffany Taylor, Sunny, there are so many people behind the scenes that have worked tirelessly and worked so many hours to bring this to you. They have expertly put together a panel. They have put together a director track this year that makes it exciting for you to be able to think about the future, to be able to think about where our profession is going, and to be able to think about how we can better serve our students. So I hope you and your teams will all tune in. You'll take advantage of all the sessions that we have, and you'll be able to learn together and collectively chat about what it is that you've taken away from this conference. I also want to give a quick mention to one of our team members, Michael Harbaugh. Many of you know him because he was literally the person that helped to bring you into the Handshake team. And today we actually celebrate his 5-year anniversary. So I hope all of you will also take a moment to either on the Handshake Partner Slack or here within the Bevy system, send him a direct message, congratulate him for 5 years, and thank him for bringing you into the Handshake fold. We are thrilled to be partners with all of you, and what a year it has been. So let me start by just sort of acknowledging that this past 12 months, 18 months have been rather insane. I think collectively we have experienced a lot of difficulty. We have experienced the unprecedented. We have experienced having to pivot very, very quickly. There have been highs, there have been lows, there have been struggles, and there have obviously also been triumphs. But most importantly, we have learned. We have learned from each other. We have learned from our own strength. And we have learned from the capabilities of our students and our employers and our ecosystem in how well we can actually be nimble and be agile. And I think those lessons are the ones that I want us to take with us as we head into the next 2 days of conference sessions. We're at a precipice. We're at a point of opportunity. And if this year has taught us nothing else, it is that we are able to enable change. We are capable of pushing forward the type of future that we want to see. So allow me to transition to our vision and to where we want to be over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. This is a vision that we want to build with you. So first and foremost, let's start with Handshake's history. I always think it's important that as we look forward, we also ground ourselves in where it is we have come from and where we started. This sign, for those of you that have never seen this image before, is a street sign outside of Houghton, Michigan. Our 3 co-founders were students at Michigan Tech University before they became co-founders of Handshake. And as students in Houghton, Michigan, and again, many of you on this call have probably never visited, and you're probably unfamiliar with where it's located. It is north of Detroit and Chicago by 6 and 9 hours, and they receive about 300 plus inches of snow a year. Now, as you can imagine, that really prohibits a lot of employers from actually visiting campus. There aren't a lot of employers that are going to venture to Houghton, Michigan. And what the co-founders realized as students was that unfortunately, even if they were really talented, they couldn't get access to all the opportunities that they wanted. They weren't able to necessarily get connected to the employers in Silicon Valley or in other major cities that were outside of Michigan because those employers weren't making their way up to their institution. And that is essentially how Handshake was born. Handshake was born because they wanted to ensure that opportunity could be distributed more evenly. They wanted to make sure that students like themselves across the US and now internationally had the opportunity to be able to get connected to employers, to people, and to jobs and internships that they were most interested in. We have always been about students, we have always been about access, and we have always been about opportunity. Those core founding principles have never strayed in terms of how we've grown as a company or how we make decisions or how we think about the growth of Handshake. Now, you might be wondering, how do we do this? Our mission is very simple. We continue to democratize opportunity, and we want to help every single student find a great job and build a foundation for a meaningful career, no matter who they are, who they know, or where they come from. This is incredibly core to everything that we do, and you're going to hear me come back to this over and over and over again, because I think it's important that we ground ourselves in who we are and how we got started. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, how do we do this? How do you actually democratize opportunity? We do it 4 different ways. And for those of you that have been with us since 2018, you'll remember this particular slide. I certainly do. I was a campus partner at the time, and I believe Jonathan Stull was actually presenting this at one of the director's workshops. We democratize access 4 different ways. First, it's actually increasing access to opportunity. That's what the Handshake Network has done for us, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. We increase access to information. We all know that as students make decisions, they need information in order to make well-informed decisions. And depending on where you come from or who your family knows, that really limits sometimes the access of information that you might have. And so we work to democratize that. We are also working to increase access to social capital. It is no secret, all of us know this, we've been in the field for a long time, that students need connections, they need relationships, they need networks, and they need social capital. Unfortunately, though, we have many, many students across all of our campuses, large and small, public and private, that don't come to college with any kind of social capital or any network. They don't even know where to start. And so that is another big piece of what we do here. And lastly, we want to increase access to skills, allowing them to think about what skills they are gaining, how they can continue looking for new skills or building new skills, and how do they display that for our employers. We're in the nascent stages of that one, but we look forward in the next 3 years to continue building upon that. Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about is democratizing access means that we actually have to change systems. And I think this is an incredibly important reminder for us. If we go back 5 or 6 years ago, when Handshake first started, what we all remember in our sort of culture, in our profession, was what I would call the legacy model. Each of us as institutions had individual closed enterprise systems that we purchased for our school and that we required employers to create an account for in order to post or in order to access our students. And as an employer, if you were recruiting at 20 schools, 50 schools, 100 schools, you would have that many number of accounts, that many number of profiles, that many number of logins, and you would have to repeat over and over and over again when you wanted to actually post your opportunities and to share it with all of these schools. We all know that that's time consuming. And as employers, their time is valuable and it's limited. And so what would end up happening is they would obviously choose what we know as core schools. So when Handshake came into the market, they came in with a very different model. They came in as a network where employers could log in, have one login, one account, one profile, and post their opportunities across multiple schools to be able to get access to students and talent that otherwise they wouldn't have access to, right? Think about the co-founder story. That was precisely what they were trying to do, was to democratize that access. And back then in 2015 and 2016, when Handshake first started, I was in career services. I believe I was at Wellesley at the time, I was at Mason about to transition over to Wellesley. And I remember the conversations in our field. There was skepticism, there was cynicism, there was fear. I don't know about sharing my employers. What if that means my students don't get the great opportunities? Is that going to hurt my outcomes numbers, right? People were nervous because it was different. It was different than what we had done before. But this is an exact example of systemic change. Handshake changed the system, literally and figuratively, for how we operated. And what we've been able to see is that every school that has joined Handshake has benefited from this. You have all seen an increase of 200 to 300% in your employer relationships and your opportunities for students. Everybody has benefited. You've heard me say it before, and you will hear me say it again. When it comes to equity, when it comes to our students, it is not a zero-sum game. And if we care about equity and access, which I know all of you do so deeply, we have to be willing to change the systems that are not benefiting our students. And it will feel scary sometimes, but it is worth it as we head forward. So with that history and that background, allow me to look into the future and to share a little bit more about where we are headed and what we want to be able to build with each of you. Here's our 3-year vision. Moving forward, we remain even more committed to access and to outcomes. I think 2020 was a year that continued to hone and refine our focus on this. And I know for many of you, it has done the same, not only for your institutions, but specifically for your offices. You understand that career services is a tool for social justice. You understand that the work you do can fundamentally change the lives of your students, the social mobility for them and their families. And that is incredibly important. So first, what we want to do is focus on bringing the product to life for students. What this essentially means is that we want to make Handshake really sticky for students. And some of you might not be familiar with that term from the Heath brothers about making it sticky. What that means is first, we want to make sure that this is a seamless experience for students. You and I both know education is no longer linear. We have students that might start at a community college, they might transfer, they might start at a 4-year, they might go to another institution, they might go to grad school, they might come back. Eventually they'll become employers, hopefully recruiting your students again, right? And as our students do this, we want their experience on Handshake to be seamless. We want their account to be able to travel and follow them. And we want them to be able to only have to log in once to be able to have all of their information so that they can get the most out of the system and therefore they can give back in the system as well. The second is that we want to make sure our students have a personalized experience. When they think about having a personalized experience, they have higher levels of personalization in all parts of their daily lives, from movie and show recommendations, I know you all are familiar with that, to fitness programs, to financial apps. They expect the same from us. And because of that, we are really fortunate that we've just brought on a new chief technology officer that actually has specialized experience in search from Amazon, Google, and LinkedIn. And we know that he's going to lead us in really sharpening this experience for our students. And lastly, we want to make sure that we show students a more human experience. I want to be really clear. As a tech company, we actually have no desire to replace human connection. Instead, we want to be able to create it at scale. We see technology as an enabling force for connection. We just see it as something that we can help you do at scale. We do not want to replace you, and we do not want to replace that human element. We know that that is incredibly important, and for so many of our students, this process is already scary enough. And so we want students to be able to build relationships on Handshake with their peers, with employers, and most importantly, with you as well. So at the most foundational level, this first bucket about bringing the product to life for students, we realize that we are only useful and we are only valuable to you when your students actually want to use us and find success on Handshake. So that's first. The second bucket is about increasing access with trust. What I want to talk about here is that we need to continue thinking about how do we increase access to opportunity, but at the same time, personalize that experience for students. More is not always better, but more is important if it helps our students to access specifically what it is they are looking for. We have a lot of opportunities on Handshake right now, but what might be a little bit surprising to all of you as we did our research and really dug into everything is that the average student actually only sees about 3% of jobs on Handshake right now. Okay, think about that for a second. As one of my colleagues so aptly put, are your students seeing the best 3% of jobs? The ones that are most relevant to them? Or are they just seeing any 3% of jobs? Now you might be asking yourself, okay, well, why? Why is this happening? Why do they not see more? It is because we are still functioning under a deeply ingrained system that we've all become numb to, we've become accustomed to in the early talent recruitment space. I'll give you a moment to think about what that might be. It is the notion of job approvals. Historically, we engaged in this practice for 3 reasons. We had to ensure the safety of our students. We wanted to make sure the legitimacy of employers, right? We wanted to make sure our students had relevant job opportunities that matched their interests. And we wanted to show our value to senior administrators and to our institutions that we could bring real opportunities to our students and help them get hired. Now, those goals are great goals and they remain the same, but we can do it. We can achieve those goals in better ways. We don't have to do it the same way that we have always done. Things have changed. Technology has evolved, and our students, quite frankly, they have very new expectations for how we can collectively serve them. So let me paint you a picture of what I believe we could actually do. First, let's tackle safety. That's first and foremost. You can see that on the slide. Nothing happens without trust and safety first. This is a baseline for Handshake, and we've always been committed, and we will continue to be committed to strengthening and prioritizing, making sure that you can trust all of the employers that are on our network. We will continue to build better mechanisms that can actually automate the legitimacy of employers that right now you are doing manually. We can find ways to check their website domains, their emails, their phone numbers, their business licenses, for example. We can strengthen trust and save you time. These don't have to be mutually exclusive. Next, let's look at relevancy. So the middle two boxes that you see there are really about relevancy. And I think what's also important as you look at this diagram is that we actually need to decouple this notion of trust and legitimacy with relevancy. Right now, you're all very familiar with the trust score, for example. Well, over the past few years, the trust score, quite frankly, has evolved into the fit score. And so some schools are choosing not to accept certain employers because they don't feel like it's the right fit or the right relevancy. Unfortunately, that impacts the employer's score, and that impacts many of you in the network, because some of those employers might actually be really great opportunities that your students might be interested in. It just wasn't a good fit for another institution, right? But their decision has now impacted whether or not your students have access. So we need to do better there, and we need to decouple these two pieces. So you have trust and then you have relevancy. Now, I know there's a fear from some of you that career services might not have a place in our network as we move forward. But I want to reassure you that without you and without your expertise, this vision, what I am talking about specifically right now, it actually doesn't work, okay? We need you. We want you. We just need to continue evolving our partnership and what that looks like. Not only should Handshake continue to improve our relevancy, as I've already mentioned in the first bucket and focus area, we have an opportunity to actually bring you, okay, as you see in that bottom bucket that's highlighted in green, we have an opportunity to bring you and your expertise and your guidance into the mix in a way that no platform and no network has done before. I envision a world where instead of you or one of your team members spending hours upon hours approving jobs, your students can simply have access to what is on Handshake. And instead, you can use your time and your expertise to actually share and add signal and boost relevancy for the students that are at your institution. This doesn't exist currently on any platform, but we are so excited to build this with you and to build this for you. And lastly, your value is important. Colleges and universities, especially over this past year, are feeling so much pressure. And you, my friends, are the key component to this answer of ROI. Increasing access for your students ensures greater outcomes. It ensures that you are able to shine, and we want you to be able to provide your students with more of what they need, whether that's a job at a Big Four institution or it's an internship at a small nautical museum in Maine, right? Your expertise can help increase the visibility for industries, for employers, for roles that you know your students are most interested in, while at the same time, you can rest assured that the students who are interested in maybe more obscure industries or professions don't get left behind. Let me give you a quick example. When I was at Wellesley, a lot of my students wanted to go into consulting. They wanted to go into finance. They wanted to go into iBanking. It's probably similar to many of you. And I had a lot of alums. I had a lot of strong networks. I had a lot of opportunities in the system for those areas. But I also had some students, not a lot of them, but I had some that were interested, for example, in entertainment. I didn't have many of those opportunities. They weren't coming my way. But the reality is Handshake has them. has those opportunities, and I want students to be able to access those. Now, obviously, this is an example that is specific to an institution I worked at, but think about it from your perspective. Maybe for you, it's international students. Maybe for you, it's students who want to go into agriculture. Maybe for you, it's students who want to be in an industry that just simply isn't as popular as some of the other ones, and you need to still find ways to help them. We can build a better future where we help you and your students find more meaningful work. Now, if you want to learn more about this, I do encourage you to attend our panel and our session tomorrow afternoon on reimagining the trust score. And you will be able to hear and get an in-depth look at the first steps and the first stages of how we are going to make this particular vision a reality. All right, let's move on to the third bucket of our vision. The third is really advocating for our profession with data and insights. We believe in you, and we believe in advocating for the important work that you do. We want to contribute to the national conversation on education to employability and emphasize the critical work that career educators do on your campus with your students. I want to be very, very frank. I recognize the privilege that I have when I have the stage or the meeting with university presidents, with association executives, with senior level legislators, and I don't want to waste that opportunity to not advocate for this profession and for the great work that you do with your students. I want to use the data and the insights to be able to highlight that importance and help others understand that all of you in the audience are ready for change. You are ready to adapt. You are ready to evolve with the needs of your students. And with a little bit more support, you will be able to do that. We also want to arm you specifically with the insights that you will need to shine within your own institution and to be able to actually embed the change in practice that you want to see. Okay. As I mentioned before, you have so much expertise, you have so much experience, and there's an opportunity for us to harness that in the product so that you can better contribute and advocate, and we can continue to use your valuable insight and signal for all of your students. I see a future where all of you, every single one of you, not just some institutions, not just some leaders, but all of you are mission critical at your institutions, where you have a seat at the highest, most senior ranks of your institution, and career education is embedded into the student experience every step along the way. So as we work towards this mission and this vision, we have a session later tomorrow around insights. It's an insights deep dive where you can also learn a bit more about how students and employers are using some of that data and insights in our product, which could also potentially give you new ideas for how you continue to advocate and how you think about your positioning and your framing at your institutions. This will also feature some of our insights team members at Handshake, so I hope you'll attend that as well. And last but not least, let me get to our fourth bucket, where we want to focus on delivering more equitable outcomes. Our vision would not be complete without an explicit commitment to equitable outcomes. We look to achieve this a few different ways. The first is that we want to hold ourselves accountable. We have established an impact advisory board a couple years ago that are made up of experts in the social impact space that hold us accountable to our mission. They look deeply at our numbers and our data to ensure that we are not exacerbating existing gaps, but rather we are helping to close them. We also look to surface data to you as partners in this process. I kind of mentioned that before in the previous bucket. I want to mention it again. We just released our first set of DEI template reports for all of you to use so that you can look at an institutional level and actually check to see if there are any gaps across the demographics that you serve and the engagement with your office. We'll continue to look for new ways to ensure that we make this possible and easier for you so that we can learn and iterate together. And lastly, we look to illuminate the research that can actually help change behavior. As part of our new research arm, which hopefully many of you saw that launch in that email just a month ago, Handshake Network Trends is committed to sharing data and insight that can help employers, that can help universities and colleges, and that can help students think more deeply about how they recruit and interact. Okay, that was a lot of information. And now you're likely thinking, well, how are you going to execute across all of this? How are you actually going to achieve this particular vision? I want to be very honest. I've led change at multiple institutions. And at the beginning, you don't know exactly what every detail is going to be. You don't know exactly how it's going to pan out, but you do know, and you keep a steady eye on that vision, and you go through the process together. So we've worked internally first to define the principles that are going to guide our development over the next 3 years. The first is that we're always going to keep students safe. So no matter what we build to make this a more seamless experience, to make this a more personalized experience, to make this a more relevant experience, we will continue to abide by the strongest legal regulations, FERPA, GDPR, et cetera, to ensure that we are protecting students from fraud. We recognize that every school also has moral, ethical, and local and state level considerations that you have to work within, that you have to keep in mind. So we'll make sure to keep that in mind as we think about those elements. The second is that we always put students in the driver's seat. This is really important to us as our students first sort of value. And I know for many of you, you also put students first. When faced with an option, we will always prioritize student preference, student choice, and student agency in their own career journey. This applies from everything, including how they identify themselves, to what opportunities they'd like to apply for. The third, as I promised you, you are a core component to this vision. We will always find ways to let schools create unique and personalized experiences. I can promise you it will likely look different than what any of you are thinking in your heads right now, because we're going to build this together. We're going to iterate. We're going to look at the data. We're going to see how it works, and we're going to continue to make it better and better. In our partnership, we know that your expertise is invaluable. You will always know your students better than we could, or quite frankly, any technology could. Schools will always have the ability to create the best experience for your students, and we look forward to building that for you. And fourth, we will always provide you, our schools, with insight and data on student activity. We sit at the intersection of students and career centers and employers, and we know that that means we have a responsibility to actually surface proper insight and engagement so that you can more properly influence and increase access to your students and to the opportunities that they have. Okay, with that, you are going to hear a lot at this conference of a common theme, and that theme is recalculating. Many thanks to Lindsay Pollock for that. She is also our keynote. This year has really taught us that we need to relearn, that we need to keep rethinking, and that it's given us an opportunity to embrace a new beginning, new systems, and new practices. So tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time, I hope you will join me and Lindsay for her keynote on how career educators can help students in this next era of work. We will also be giving away 200 copies of Lindsay's new book to those who attend the session, so please be sure to come. You'll also notice that many of our sessions follow this notion of recalculating. Up next is actually recalculating the transition to virtual. Join us right after at 9:30 with Kevin Grubb from Villanova and Todd Good from IBM to talk about creating certainty in uncertainty and what that's going to look like for this fall. Next, you can recalculate how institutions might function and what they are thinking about. This is going to be a conversation with me and the reporter Paul Fain, who used to work for Inside Higher Ed and now is the author of his new newsletter, The Job, which I highly recommend you subscribe to. Him and I are going to have an active conversation, sort of shooting each other hard questions about what does this really mean? What does this really look like? And what do we need to keep in mind as we go into the workplace of today? After that, you'll see recalculating our commitment to outcomes and connecting career education to the value of higher education. I want to thank Dave from Strata, Andy from Wake Forest, Christina from JFF, and Felice Noodleman, who's going to be our expert moderator from the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. They're going to talk about the metrics that matter. What do senior leaders actually care about? And how can you best position your work to get their attention? We're also going to have recalculating our integration into the university. That's going to be tomorrow, where we have Christian Garcia from University of Miami, and we have Jesse Downs from Louisiana State talking about how do you actually embed career services. It's hard to change things on our campuses. So sometimes the best option is actually using the very systems that are difficult to change to be able to promote the type of embeddedness that you're looking for. So you'll be able to hear not only their challenges, but how they overcame those. And lastly, recalculating our commitment to equity. Join us again tomorrow afternoon with Michael Ellison, co-founder and CEO of CodePath, Amelia Parnell with NASPA, Angie Cometh, the incoming dean at NYU, and our wonderful moderator from the Chronicle of Higher Education, Elise Ashburn. We have so many great sessions for you over the course of the next couple of days. I hope you'll connect with each other, that you'll come, that you'll listen, and that you'll enjoy what we've put together for you. I look forward to hearing all that you learn. Thank you so much, and welcome again to the Handshake Access 2021 conference.